Well, good morning. Today is Monday, September the 24th, and this is Microeconomics. Exam 1 is in progress and closes tomorrow. I have not looked to see what performance is like to date. When the exam closes tomorrow night, I will order all the data and put it into a spreadsheet format, and I will email it to you, and that will show you your letter grade on the exam. You may not get that until Wednesday afternoon if I don't get it done tomorrow night, because Wednesday morning I'm in class all the time. Let me remind you that next week on Monday and Wednesday we will not have class. Okay, I'll be out of town. There will be no class sessions Monday and Wednesday. That said, there's plenty to do on this topic of elasticities, and I invite you, as always, email me with any kind of questions or issues you come across. What's on your mind? Anybody, anything? Anything about this class?
Yes.
What? Anything about the world at large? Hopefully you're keeping up to date with Brett Kavanaugh and the Supreme Court nomination and the charges of sexual misconduct, etc. That will make something we could perhaps talk about more on Wednesday, although the first lady involved isn't testifying until Thursday, the last I heard. Anything else going on?
Went over your YouTube on tariffs and everything with Walmart and everything, eventually how that's going to come and hit.
Right, the tariffs have not had much of an impact yet. We'll start seeing some consumer prices begin to rise. We'll see whether they are somewhat insignificant, as the Republicans claim, or whether they are high enough to make people back off, which is, by the way, exactly what today's class is about. How high does the price on something have to get before you say, oh, to hell with it, I'll buy something else?
Isn't that called the law of diminishing returns?
No, not quite. The law of diminishing returns is more like, if I study 2 hours, I'll make this grade. If I study an extra hour, will I make a commensurately high grade? And you find that as you add extra hours, your grade doesn't go up as fast. Or if you had an acre of ground and you were planting corn and you put this much fertilizer on it, you got this much corn. What happens when you put more fertilizer? If you double the fertilizer, will you double the corn? No. I mean, if that didn't apply, I could grow the world's food supply in a little pot. All I'd have to do is just keep adding fertilizer. So diminishing returns means the more of it you add, the less of it you get back proportionately. In this case, what we're talking about, how many of you would change your consumption purchases of gasoline if gasoline goes to $4 a gallon tomorrow? How many of you would cut back? Would you? Is anybody wouldn't cut back? I wouldn't cut back, okay? To me, $2.75, $4 a gallon, all of that is within my tolerance. I'm going fishing, okay? But at $6 a gallon, now you're hitting me, okay? And so we all have a maximum price we can pay, or we're willing to pay, before we start saying, well, wait one day a minute, okay? And we start looking for something else. That's what this topic is. To me, it's one of the most important topics in micro and in life and in business we're ever going to talk about. And it's what happens when you start raising the price on a product. How do markets behave? So to open that and to illustrate it, I want to tell you a story from many years ago. It kind of shows what's going on. My business partner and I were doing seminars all over the country for land surveyors. It was on the business of land surveying. Anybody here know what a land surveyor does? What?
A lot of times it's marked with the government, and they're sitting there out there with their scopes doing all of the, they're doing all the surveys so that they can partition off different sections of land.
They are out there determining where the boundaries to your property are, and they're seeing if somebody's built a fence or a house partly on your property. They are doing the survey to put a road in. And if you have a road that's going to cross a river, you want to make damn sure the two ends of the road hit at the right place so you can build a straight bridge between them. Because if one road is off 100 feet, you got a mess, right? What's life like as a surveyor? It means you spend most of your time out in the woods, killing rattlesnakes, fighting hornets, and trying to measure and put stakes in the ground and tell where stuff is. The part about surveying most people don't appreciate is once you've drawn the map for what this is, you still have to go back to the courthouse and look at all the legal documentation going with that and see what other claims there might be or other surveys there might be. It's fairly complicated. Our seminar was a 2-day seminar. And at the conclusion of the first day, as everybody was leaving, one of the surveyors, an older man, came up to us and he said, "Fellas, I've been in the business for 35 years, and I've got a problem or an issue in my company I'd like to talk to you about." And we said, "Sure, we'd love to talk to you. What is it?" He says, "Well, right now in my business," this is many years ago, he said, "we charge $30 an hour to put a 3-person survey crew out there doing work." He says, "That's what everybody else in the area charges." So, okay, we got that part. What's the problem? He says, "The problem is my crews are working 80-hour weeks." He says, "I have so damn much work to do. They're out there 80 hours a week." He says, "I'm making money, hand over fist, but my crews are burning out. And I got 3 really good crews, really good people. I don't want to lose them." And he says, "I'm a small enough business. I don't want to add more crews. That's too many people, too many problems, and too much extra equipment." He says, "I just don't know what to do next." And my partner, who was going to law school at the same time, he's a pretty sharp guy, he said, "Look, why don't you double your price?" And the guy looked at us for a minute. He says, "Are you out of your mind? If I double my price, I will lose 90% of my business, if not all of it, because they'll go to the other surveyors." We said, "Okay, now just play our game for a minute. Are there a few people that might stay with you?" And he thought, and he said, "Yeah, there may be a few." So look, what if you doubled your price? And what if you lost half your business? You're only doing half as much work. Would you be better off or worse off? What do you think? Better off. Why?
You're making the same price for half the work.
You got it. Just exactly. You're making the same money for half the work. Now, I don't know where you come from, but where I come from, more money, less work is always desirable, right? And he looked at us like that and he said, "Y'all are crazy as hell." We said, "Well, let's go down to the bar and have a drink." We went down to the bar and had a drink with him and talked to him about it and said, "You're probably going to lose more than that at first, but the people that really like what you do, they're going to, they'll come back." And he's kind of like, "I don't know, man. I can't double my prices." It's just something to think about, but you ought to think about raising your prices. And he didn't like the idea of raising price because he felt like he was going to hurt the feelings of his customers or he was going to chase them away. Finished class the second day, shook hands, "Hi, have a good time." Didn't hear from him again for 6 months. 6 months later, he called us, and we were both in the office that day, and he said, "You remember me? I'm so-and-so from so." "Oh, yeah." He said, "You remember when y'all told me to double my prices?" We said, "Wait a minute, we didn't tell you to double your prices." He said, "Think about it." No. He said, "Y'all told me to double my prices, and I doubled them. Just wanted you to know." "Oh, well, how'd it go?" He said, "I lost 90% of my customers, just like I told you I would." And that's just what we said. Oh. He let us hang there for about 15 seconds, and then he started kind of chuckling. He says, "And then they started coming back." "Yeah, that's good to hear. How much of them come back?" He said, "A lot of them." He says, "I got a problem though." "What's your problem now?" He said, "I'm charging $60 an hour. I'm the highest priced surveyor in 3 states, but I'm back to working 80-hour weeks on my crews." He said, "We got more money than God, but we can't keep doing this. We're killing ourselves." My buddy, always quick with a comment, immediately said, "Well, have you thought about doubling your price?" And we all had a good laugh. The last time we talked to him, he had driven his price up to $100, and he was still working, if he wanted to, up to 60 hours a week on every crew. What does this illustrate? Setting the price for what you're selling is a tricky, tricky job. And when you set your first price initially, you're usually pretty conservative about it because you don't want to be too expensive and have no customers. However, what a lot of small business and particularly service businesses do is they start off with low prices because they want to have some business. They get a reputation for having a low price. They get used to having that much volume, and then they get afraid to try to raise a price. And it's very traumatic when you start raising your price because your sales always fall off. That's what we call the law of demand. When you charge more, people buy less. But the question is, are you making less? Our focus is on your total revenue. Now, we're going to talk profit later, but we're going to talk for right now, total revenue, price times quantity. And I know if I raise my price, my quantity decreases, the law of demand. But sometimes when I raise my price, I make more money. And sometimes when I raise my price, I make less money because I chase too many people away. All of that is the concept of the price elasticity of demand. How sensitive are customers to a change in your price? We've already talked about this a little bit when we did the incidence of attacks. You remember that? We said with inelastic demand, think about it now. If I have an inelastic demand curve, is it fairly steep or fairly flat? It's very steep. If I have an inelastic demand curve and I raise my price from price 1 to price 2, what do you think will happen to my total revenue? Not change much?
It's gonna go up.
Going to go up. Why?
Because
Well,
you're
look at the numbers. $8 and I raise it to $10. I'm selling 100, and then suddenly I'm selling 95. What's my total revenue at the first point?
800.
$8 a piece, 100 of them, 800. What's my total revenue up here?
950.
It's $10 a piece at 95, $950. Okay so far? When the demand is really inelastic, they keep buying it, you make more money. That surveyor had an inelastic demand, but he couldn't prove it until he tried it. You with me? It's that simple, conceptually. But here's what happens. So let's do the other side just for grins. Suppose I had a very elastic demand. It's a terrible marker. Oh, that's better. And suppose I raise my price. I'm selling 100 of them at $8. I raise my price to $10. What happens? Suddenly I'm only selling 40 of them. What happened to my total revenue?
It went down.
It went from 800 to 400. You see that? Sometimes when you raise your price, you make more money. Sometimes when you raise your price, you make less money. When you make more money, that's an inelastic demand. When you make less money, that's an elastic demand. You with me so far? Let's write the rules down then. If I raise my price, my total revenue will go up, right? By the way, what if I did it in reverse, from $10 down to $8? If I reduce my price, what will happen to my total revenue? It'll go down. Good. This is always true when the demand is inelastic. Okay? So if the surveyor cut his price from $30 to $20, he wouldn't have picked up a hell of a lot more in business, but he'd have worked his butt off and made less money. What's the rule for elastic demand? When I raise my price, my total revenue does what? Drops. Likewise, by the way, if I reduce my price from 10 to 8, my total revenue would increase. This is always true with elastic demand. If you keep those two concepts in mind, a lot of what we're going to do is going to be a lot easier. Okay, can I erase the board? Because here's where the magic starts, okay? When we draw a demand curve, for our purposes in this class, it's always going to be a straight line. It's not a curved line, it's not a squiggly line. If I could just get in focus, life would be better. We're always going to use straight line demand curves. And here's what's true about straight line demand curves. If you draw them all the way out to each axis, and then you divide that line in half, find the midpoint of the line. We used to do that in geometry with a protractor. You remember that, some of y'all, right? We can find the midpoint of this line. Now, this is the important part. Everywhere on the bottom half of that demand curve, the demand is inelastic. Everywhere on the top half, it's elastic. I don't care what the slope is. This is not slope. So go back over here for just a minute with me. We said if you had a really steep demand curve, what was it? Elastic or inelastic? Really steep. Inelastic. Well, that's because if you drew the demand curve from this intercept all the way up to this intercept, guess what? You're in the bottom half of the curve. And let's do it over here. If we drew this demand curve, would you say that's elastic or inelastic? It's fairly flat, it's fairly elastic. That's because if you drew it from this axis all the way out to where it intercepts this axis, what? You're in the top half of that demand curve. You with me, okay? Top half elastic, bottom half inelastic. What are the rules that go up there? Elastic. If I reduce my price, my total revenue will rise. If I raise my price, my total revenue will fall. We just did that, right? Those are the rules. In the inelastic range, they move the same way. When price goes up, total revenue goes up. When price goes down, total revenue goes down. Okay so far? You got to remember these rules. In the elastic range, this is the behavior. In the inelastic range, this is the behavior. Same rules we just wrote down. In the inelastic range, price and total revenue move in the same direction. Raise price, more money. Lower price, less money. In the elastic range, they move in opposite directions. Got to keep that straight in your mind. So, look at me. Look at this. If I raise my price from price 1 to price 2, will I make more money or less money? Total revenue is going up. What about when I go from price 2 to price 3? Will I make more money?
Yes.
Yeah. All the way up here, we're going to call this price 4. From price 3 to price 4, if I raise price, I make more money, right? What if I go from price 4 to price 5? What happens to my money? I start making less. So if I go to price 6, I make even less. Which price gives me the very most money? 4. Price 4, which occurs at this midpoint, gives me the maximum total revenue. Now, that's not profit, that's just revenue, okay?
I'm a little bit confused with the concept. Does that mean that a demand can start inelastic and become elastic or vice versa?
It means that given a demand curve, if you start your prices low, you're going to see inelastic demand. And if you keep raising your prices, you're eventually going to see at these prices elastic.
So is the max total revenue kind of like equilibrium?
No, equilibrium would depend on where the supply curve went, and we're not even going to use a supply curve.
Okay.
Not for now. Okay. Let me ask you this. If I was at price one and I'm selling a toy, and by golly, at that price, I'm selling 1,000 of them. I make $1,000, cool. And then I said, gee, if I went, this is $1. If I went to $2, right? And now I'm selling 900 of them. Which one's a better price? $2 why?
Because you're making more money.
Not just am I making more money, $1,800,
So last.
I'm not producing as many toys. I'm selling fewer toys, right? So price two is better than price one. Everybody agree? What about price three? What happens at price three? Am I going to make more money? My revenue's going up. What about my cost of producing the toys?
It's going down.
It's going to be lower because I sell them. So if somebody put their price right here, what would you think?
You're working
You're
hard.
stupid.
You work too hard.
Would they be better here? Oh, hell yes. Well, would they be better here than here?
Yes.
Oh, hell yes. Would they be better here than here? Oh, hell yes. Because they're going to keep making more money and either producing less toys or working less hours or whatever. So anytime somebody sets their price down in here, what do we call that? Stupid.
Losing revenue.
Stupid. You do not set your price in the inelastic range. Now, you may have done it out of ignorance, like that surveyor. Didn't know any better, had to figure it out. But if you know you're in the inelastic range, that's a clear sign. You're underpricing yourself. You're underpricing your product. We never operate in the inelastic range. How do we know when we get out of it? When our customers or our sales start falling off. When our revenue starts falling off, rather. Okay? But we don't want to be down in here. Everybody clear on that? That's one of the most fundamental concepts, and yet it's so powerful, particularly in small business and people providing services. They tend to underprice themselves all the time. There's another danger with having a very low price. What is that?
They might think you have a diminished quality.
Exactly. There is a perceived price-quality relationship. If it's too cheap, there's got to be something wrong with it. Okay? Now, I buy my fishing tackle at Walmart, and it's cheap. But I know what I'm looking for in fishing tackle, and so I don't buy the junk. I just buy the cheap stuff, because it still works. But if I'm going to go out and buy something I don't know anything about, and you're going to sell it to me dirt cheap, one of two things is going on. It's a piece of junk or it's stolen. Right? So that's another issue. This is the concept. The concept isn't too bad, okay? But economists are never happy just giving you the concept. They want to put numbers to it. And that's what we're going to do now. We're going to talk about a calculation called the price elasticity of demand. And now it does get a little ugly. This is our symbol. E sub D is the price elasticity of demand. Now, there are some other elasticities we'll talk about. But this is about what happens to the quantity demanded when the price changes. That's the big one. That's the one we do the most with. Learn this one, the other ones are just about duplicates. It's a number, a coefficient that we're going to calculate. And it is calculated as the percentage change in the quantity demanded, the percentage change in how much people buy, divided by the percentage change in the price of the product. When this is presented in textbooks, it's just a monstrosity. It's just ugly. It's just confusing. We're going to do it the simple way. Here's our simple sample numbers. I'm going to let the price go from $10 to $8, and I'm going to assume that the quantity goes from 60 to 100 units. Okay, I'm making up the numbers. But let's see how we calculate this. How do you calculate the percentage change? And let's do the quantity first. How do we calculate the percentage change here? Well, the way they taught you in middle school or high school depends on where you start. It's either a change of 40 over 60 if you're raising it, or it's a change of 40 over 100 if you're lowering it. We don't want that kind of inconsistency. We want to always get the same number. So we're going to say that the percentage change is the change in the quantity, right, 40, divided by the average quantity. So that's going to give us 40 divided by 8. Everybody okay with the top part, the numerator? How do you do the percentage change in price? It's the change in price divided by the average price. How much did price change here? 2. What's the average price? 9. So this will be the change in price over the average price. And there's where we're going. That's the math we're going to do. Now, I'm old school. I do it this way. 4 over 8 times 9 over 2. Did anybody else learn it that way? Invert and multiply? Or did you just learn to do it on a calculator? Whichever works. If you want to do it this way, 4 over 8 is 0.5. 2 over 9 is 0.22. You can do that and do the division. And many times when the numbers get complicated, that's the best way to do it. Me being old school, I get 36 divided by 16, and then I do that math, which goes 2. 32 is 4 is 2.5. There's some rounding in there. It doesn't have to be precise, but they're pretty close numbers. Okay? I would say then for my answer, the price elasticity of demand is equal to 2.25. Okay, so far?
Is that a dollar amount?
Nope. It's not in any unit of measure. It's just a coefficient. It's just a number. So that's a good question. There is no unit of measure. How are we doing so far? Math okay. Then answer me this. Is this a positive number or a negative number? Well, take a look. What was the percentage, which way did quantity change?
Diminished.
down.
Well, if we started here, if we started at this first point, it went down, so it's a negative. And if it went down, what did price do? Went up. So that's a positive. I would make this a negative answer, right? Positive over a negative, negative over a positive. This number will always be negative. Why? Because anytime you raise the price, people buy less. Anytime you lower the price, they buy more. You'll always have a positive over a negative or a negative over a positive. That's the law of demand, remember that? So this number will always be negative, even if we don't write it. If you see something like this, D equals 1.91, that's a negative number. But we figure if you're reading this, you're smart enough to know that's a negative number. It's always a negative number. So let's do a couple of them for practice. Price 1, 16. Quantity associated with that, 400. Price 2, 19. Quantity associated with that. Will it be a bigger number or a smaller number? Why? Because the price is higher, people buy less. Let's make it 300. Calculate the price elasticity of demand with those numbers. And this is why a calculator is a nice thing to have. How we doing? Got it? Good? Yes, sir? You good? Anybody, any kind of questions, any kind of hesitation, any kind of doubt about this? I showed you how I got the averages, right? Add the two together, divide by 2. 16 plus 19 divided by 2. Gives you 17 and a half. Okay so far? That's about as complicated as math gets. Don't need no calculus. It makes it easier if you have it, but you don't have to. Okay? Questions? You don't ask me questions, I need to remind you that my first wife assured me that I cannot read minds. Okay? Okay. We're going to do one more. Starts out selling a price of $94. At that time, the sales level is 1,412 units per week. Experimented around with a new price of $89 and saw that sales rose to 1,500 units per week. What is the price elasticity of demand? Same calculation, different numbers.
Oh, what's the first price?
I'm sorry?
What's the first price?
First price is 94. Anybody else confirm that number?
I'm at 1.2, because I rounded my.
Okay. They'll still get you where you need to go. I like taking this number out to 4 places as a consistency thing. I think it's safer, but that's all. Questions, anybody? If there are, yes.
My question is, how is that number relevant?
You're a step ahead of me, that's where I'm going. Is this demand elastic or inelastic?
Elastic.
Elastic? Why would you say that?
Well, the price went down,
Yeah.
so the quantity demanded went up.
Yeah, but that's the law of demand. That'll always happen. Okay. How could we tell? How could we determine whether it's elastic or inelastic based on what we've done in class so far? we could calculate the total revenue. Right? What's the total revenue up here at the first point? It'll be $94 a piece times 1,412, which is how much?
132,728.
132,728. $132,728. Anybody else confirm that? Good. What's our total revenue in the second instance, at the second price? 89 times 1,500.
$132,500.
132,033.
33. Yes, sir.
$133,500. $500. Now, is it elastic or inelastic? What happened to the price? The price fell, right? What happened to the total revenue? Total revenue went up. When price and total revenue go in opposite directions, what does that mean? It's an elastic demand, opposite directions. We know that this demand is elastic because when we reduce the price, our total revenue rose. Everybody okay so far? Well, here's how that corresponds. Look at the coefficient. Look at the coefficient. We know that's a negative number, don't we? Remember that? Ignore the negative sign for a minute. Take its absolute value. What does absolute value mean? Ignore the negative. Here's the rule. If the price elasticity coefficient is greater than 1 in its absolute value, it's always elastic. If the coefficient is less than 1, it's inelastic. How we doing? So what have we done? We have defined this term, the coefficient of the price elasticity of demand. We've looked at it, what it means conceptually up and down the demand curve, and we've looked at it in how we calculate it as a numerical value. And we have determined that when its absolute value is greater than 1, the demand is elastic. When its absolute value is less than 1, it's inelastic. That's what we've done today. Now, how could you cement this into your head for next class? Make up 10 problems just like this. Make up 10 problems. Make up your own prices and quantities. Just remember, if the price goes down, people buy more. Don't screw that up, or you'll be describing a supply curve. Bad, bad, bad. Okay? Make up 10 problems, do the calculation, and determine in each case if it's elastic or inelastic. You can check that by going back and calculating total revenues for each price. If you'll do that with 10 problems, I think you'll have this stuff pretty well concreted down in your head to where it's not a big challenge. If you watch the PowerPoints first, it'll just go over this, go back, 10 problems, make up 10 problems on your own, do the calculation for each one, determine its elasticity, and then prove its elasticity with total revenue. That's it. Once you get that done, it don't go away. Okay? I could teach this whole thing on elasticity and give you a test in it. in 1 week, easy. But we'll play some more games with it next time. And next time we'll talk about things like supply elasticity. This is demand. We'll talk about cross elasticity, income elasticity. It's all the same math. It's just the same pattern. It's the same math. Just keeping the concept straight. So if you want to, for next Wednesday, do those 10 problems. Make sure you're comfortable with yourself. And then read about supply elasticity, income elasticity, cross elasticity. And we'll knock those out and it won't take very long.
So, just to confirm, you're telling me that in elasticity, in elastic, they apply both for demand and for supply as well?
We will talk about supply curves next class.
Just like what?
Yes. If you want to take a look at it in the materials before Wednesday.
Yeah,
you see,
I have.
the whole concept of elasticity is the supply curve steep or is the supply curve flat? Is it inelastic? Is it elastic? Same idea. Now all we're asking is if the price go up, or supplier's going to produce a lot more or just a little more? Same concept. Yeah. Not trying to confuse you. Well, actually I am, but
A little bit.
okay. Anybody else? Anything else? Sir.
I don't understand where did you get the number 88 and 5?
The number 88.
Yes.
That was the change in quantity. From 1412 to 1500 is 88 units. Okay? You remember this is delta Q over average Q, delta P over average P.
Got it.
Good question. Once you get it, right?
Yes.
Nothing to it. Okay? Practice before Wednesday. I promise you it'll make the second test a lot easier. Okay? Other questions, other comments, anybody? ¿Cómo se dice en español? My time is your time. Anybody?
What?
¿Cómo se dice? My time is your time.
Tu tiempo es mi tiempo.
Tu tiempo, mi tiempo. Mi tiempo is su tiempo. My time is yours. Anything else?
I honestly want to talk about the exam and I can't, so.
You what?
I want to talk about the exam.
We
and I
can't until after Tuesday.
Yeah. So.
Okay. I will see you on Wednesday. Take care.